conversation started about a year ago. There's a year left on their lease.
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna be sick?
No, I've got us locked up.
Okay.
Always important to know before.
Mhm.
I'm guessing mostly what we're seeing is dad with his little daughter.
Yep, we got a co-host today.
Is she working yet, Doug?
Soon. She's not cooperating today. She normally takes her nap at noon, but she decided to move her schedule up so she could attend this important meeting with her dad, I think. So dad's pulling up duty, so here it is. Best I can do.
Is there a free lunch that comes with this Zoom meeting?
She's got hers right here in case she. I'm prepared.
All right, well, it looks like so far there's another one coming in. I will continue to monitor anyone that is coming in late. I am going to request that everyone mutes themselves. I'd like to introduce, for those of you that do not know, Doug Birch and his co-host. Doug is representing the Outdoor Amusement Industry or Business Association and TJ Schmidt's Amusement. He's going to talk about an issue that is very important to all of us. The carnivals, hospitality, restaurants, and I know there's a number of agencies that are watching what's going on here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Birch. Thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate the introduction. I do have a little co-host here today, so hopefully she cooperates. She's adjusted her nap time. She knew we had an important meeting, I guess, and wanted to attend. So I apologize, and hopefully you understand. We wanted to talk today about
there's the baby.
There she is. We wanted to talk today about the H-2B visa program and some of the issues surrounding that program and how that is going to affect, certainly from my end, the carnival industry, but how that will probably play out and affect festivals and fairs and events. And as Mike pointed out, the hospitality industry, forestry industry, landscaping, and so forth. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the program so you understand why this is important and what it is. The H-2B visa program is a legal way for us to bring in guest workers, not to be confused with the H-2A program, which is the agricultural industry. So when you see folks at the farms and out in the fields and cherry fields in Traverse City and apple orchards, and they are coming in under an H-2A visa. The B visa program is used by traveling carnivals, which is going to be a direct impact to festivals and fairs. It's also used by the hospitality industry, which would have a lot to do with some festivals, I would assume. So hotels struggling to get workers in, Mackinac Island, think about all the people that they bring in the summer. And, Boyne Mountain, the resorts, so on and so forth. Landscapers and seafood packers, forestry industry. So it really has a significant economic impact across a lot of regions in the state.
Oh, come on.
But specifically to the carnival end of things, a lot of the carnivals have switched to H-2B visas to supplement their workforce. And there's a cap, there's a certain amount of people that you can bring in set by the government. So it's 33,000 that can come in twice a year. There's a January 1 cap and then an April 1 date of need that are both 33,000. That's a good number for you to kind of remember as a starting point. And so each year, anybody that wants to use that program has to go through a rigorous application process, prove that they cannot find American workers. And as you can imagine, given the current labor problem that the country is facing, those of us that are operating seasonal, that only offer employment for a certain amount of months, have a big problem in finding labor because people want to work year-round, or they certainly want the stability of a full-time position. So seasonal employment, which goes back to things like Mackinac Island, as well as the carnival industry, seem to be struggling to find labor. So this H-2B program has been fantastic, and it allows us to supplement what American workers we can find. The problem is the number of visas that they allow in. They have not adjusted that number as an arbitrary number, and that's exactly what it is, to correlate with the increase in demand for laborers and the lack of the American workforce, which is on, you turn on your news, you can't avoid it. You can't avoid it in your own communities. I'm sure those of you that are in chambers of commerce or working with your communities know that everyone is struggling. Brick and mortar, travel, seasonal industry, doesn't matter. We're all struggling to find laborers, and money doesn't even seem to matter. I mean, we've got here in my neck of the woods, McDonald's starting people at $20 an hour, and they can't find laborers. So we go back to the numbers. So for the April 1 date of need, let's just talk about that real quick. There were 33,000 visas available. And when the applications were filed by the deadline of January 1st through the 3rd, 134,000 visas had been applied for. And that number continues to rise as people continue to file for an April 1 or later date of need. We're north of 135,000 and climbing requested visas for an allotment of only 33,000. And the way that the government does this, it used to be that you would get your paperwork in, you would want to be the first one in, get through the system, and they would timestamp you. And if you were in, you were assured your workers if you got in with a timestamp of 12:01 a.m. It was just a crazy system. And so if you ended up with internet problems or your recruiter had problems, it became even harder. To fix that, the government said, we're going to go to a lottery system. We all cringed at that idea. We understood that maybe that it was sort of fair. But now, as a business owner, and our business model has become running our business on winning a lottery every year. And so what they do is they take those 134,000 visa applicants, they computer randomize them, spit them out, and put us into groups. Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D, as far out as they need to go in the alphabet. And they say that if you are Group A listed, you will get your workers. That accounts for the 33,000. Group A is 33,000 slots. Group B is 10,000 or 12,000. Group C is 10 or 12,000, and on down the line. And so you have to be A-listed to know you're going to get your staff. This year, in the state of Michigan, there is not a single carnival company, not one of us, that uses this program that is A-listed. Yep, that's tragic. And there's only one carnival that is B-listed. The rest of us have found ourselves C, D, E, F, and on down. The story goes that you will get your workers if you're in the B bucket. You're more assured because of the 33,000 that process in A, there may be some problems. So they may have a notice of deficiency, something might be kicked back, and that would free up some visas, and they'll start to dip into the B group. So what you're faced with is a lot of carnivals that don't have their 40, 50, 60, 80 workers that they normally bring in, and immediately have that many positions open. So if you want the same type of services out of your carnival provider, they have to have the laborers to produce those services. And so in my situation, I'll use my company as an example. We applied for 45 visa slots. We are F listed, which means we will very likely not see our workers. And I now have 45 positions open. 45. So that means the person that moved and operated our Ferris wheel, the person that moved and operated our merry-go-round, the people that they're gone. Now, exacerbate that with a problem in the American labor shortage that we already know, and the additional carnivals in the state that are also D, E, and F listed, all looking for a skilled laborer in a very specific trade in the carnival, and we're all going to be picking from an increasingly smaller pool. None of us are going to be able to staff our units the way that we normally do, if at all, frankly. And those are the conversations that are starting to happen amongst the carnivals is, how do we basically reinvent or start parking equipment? And not to sound like an alarmist, but we have seen a lot of carnivals across this country just start to pack their equipment up and park it. They can't do it. They cannot move it. They can't move it in the hours. and they can't move it without any staff. So what are the solutions? So there's the problems. Let's just kind of outline, that's a grim outlook of where we're at. We're pushed for time, so I don't want to get too involved in that. Congress fully authorized in discretionary language years ago the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Labor to lift the cap. At any point in time, they can lift the cap and say, we'll allow 60,000, 100,000 more visas in. When they see the need, Congress, that's in the discretionary language, it's in the bill, it's in the continuing resolution that the government is operating under right now. However, in the history, since we've had that language invoked, in the history, it has never happened without the administrative support. So in other words, the DOL and the DHS will not act until they meet with whoever is in the White House, because this is such a political issue. It's tied to immigration. It shouldn't be political, but it is. And so you have representatives and you have senators and you have people in positions and administrations that simply do not want to touch this issue because they're afraid that a guy like Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham on Fox News or somebody over on CNN will pick it up and will immediately run with it the wrong direction and tie it directly to illegal immigration, or they'll use the union talking points that this is driving away American jobs and driving down wages, which couldn't be further from the truth. So no politician wants to die on that cross. And we've run up against this over and over and over. We've gotten this thing to the finish line where we thought DHS or DOL was going to lift the cap and do it in a timely fashion so we can get our workers. And it takes 3 or 4 months. We wait for a midterm election. We wait for somebody to get all the political talking points where they need to be and put out the fires. We also have language that used to exist, which was called a returning worker exemption. And so what that meant was that if they had held a visa the previous 3 years, they did not count in that 33,000. That was the best language we ever had. When this program first started, that was fantastic. So that simply meant that instead of 33,000, there might be 60,000 coming into the country, or 70,000, because the returning workers didn't count against that cap. We have fought with our lobbyists and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in Washington to try to get that language back. And we have multiple times been very successful in having co-sponsors on bills and getting it in on omnibus bills and getting it in the language in a continuing resolution, because if you paid attention, our government really hasn't done a lot in the last 10 years. We just keep funding the government on continuing resolution after continuing resolution. And we will get it where we've got Senate and House support, and it gets to committee. And typically what happens there is Nancy Pelosi, or on the Senate side, it dies in committee. It never gets taken to the floor. It gets taken out of the language it's struck because, again, the political nature. They're afraid that that's going to get out, and most of your big-time politicians are union-backed. The union are, their lobbyists. They're paying a lot of money, and they just don't want to. They don't have the political capital to spend. They don't feel on this issue. So where are we today? Today, we're trying to increase support for 2 resolutions that we're working on that are very similar. So the stories I just told you, we're still harping down the same path here. But House Resolution 3897 has 47 co-sponsors. Our goal was to get to 60. Sonia Skirbeck, who's on the call, has really done an excellent job of working to rally the Michigan troops and some engagement through the Fair Association. And we have Senate Bill 2443, which is a Graham Manchin bill that's also working to basically kind of goes along with that 3897. They're both bills that are going to be favorable to our industry. We are seeing increased support. I think that one's maybe has, I'm not sure how many it has right now, but why is Michigan so important in this? You might be saying, okay, this is all great. It's all good news to have, and you understand, but what can you do? Well, Senator Gary Peters, our senator, sits currently as the chair of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committees, both of those committees. He is in a pivotal and powerful seat because DHS has to sign off on any increase in the cap. He will be the one that will go to Nancy Pelosi on the House side and committee and say, we need to do this. And he will encourage DOL and DHS to do it. He doesn't even have to really go to Nancy Pelosi in terms of getting the cap increased, because there's discretional language that fully authorizes Congress to do that now. They could do it today. But, like I said, they will meet with the people in the White House senior administration to figure out exactly how they'll roll this out. To give you the example of what's happened this year, for the January 1 date of need, the 33,000 visas that were available there, again, there was a surplus. I think 60-some, 70,000 were requested for the 33,000 for January 1 date of need. January 1 date of need isn't as significant because, as you know, the Northeast is frozen and landscapers and carnivals really aren't operating. Congress authorized in October, first time in their history, a 20,000 visa increase on that allotment. People were elated, expecting to have their workers January 1st. Just last week, finally, they issued the interim rule to release those visas. 4 months later, before the government even got around, they sat on it. DOL, DHS sat on releasing those visas. That's why this is so important for us, and this has been the problem in the past. We might get news from DHS, yep, we understand, 133,000 visas requested for 33,000. We know we have a problem. We're going to get you some supplemental visas. We're going to get to that. And about March, they decide we'll release 40 or 50,000, and those visas don't show up and aren't landed, and the interim final rule isn't issued, and we don't have access to them. Historically, it's been July, sometimes it's been August. And as you can imagine, those of us that operate starting in April, you cannot operate from April until July or just park the stuff from April to July and then try to scale up. You can't overcome your expenses of a 6-month operating season with only 2.5 months of workers left. So I'm going to share it. Can I share my screen here real quick? I see a lot of you are on, so I'm going to go ahead and share this. And Sonia will appreciate this because Sonia put this document together and we've shared it out. And Mike, I can share this to the whole group with Sonia's permission. We shared this after the fair convention, and we took action to engage more constituents. And Sonia has done a great job of outlining which congressional district is served by whom. And we've got some language here and who we need to contact in those offices and some sample language. Michigan has always come up to, I'm sorry, let me just hang on just a second here. I'm stop sharing. Has always answered the call. We are in the top 10 in engagements across the country. We have engaged, we went on January 20th, we had only engaged 11. And by the 27th, we had engaged 50, and we're still climbing of engagements to our representatives and senators and contacts to Gary Peters' office. I cannot stress enough, if you have a contact with Gary Peters, we have to get Gary Peters to move the needle on this. He is our hope in the Senate side. Bill Huizenga is another, he's on the House side, and if you have a relationship with him, we need to get him engaged as well. We've spoken with both offices, but their phones need to be ringing off the hook that this is a serious problem. So let me tell you what this means in plain terms. And I know that there's carnivals on here and that they would all agree and probably shake their head. If these workers don't show up and we can't get these workers, there's going to be a significant reduction in services. So where you're used to 20 or 25 rides, and let's not just take this to carnivals. Concessionaires use this too. So those of you that are familiar with independent concessionaire companies that come in, and some of the big ones, they use these too. And they're not getting their workers. You're going to look where we're talking 20 to 25 rides normally at an event, 10, 11, what we can do safely, if we can do it at all. And there will be events that will go without carnivals. There will be events that will go without that revenue sharing from the carnival because we simply cannot find the workers. And those carnivals who have not signed on to this program have shared that last year was one of the worst years they ever had in trying to keep a labor force. You could find people here and there, but to try to, they'll come work for a week or two and move on. because the demand, let's face it, they get their door in and get a job, get their foot in the door and get a job, and a week later another company's offering them more money, and people loyalty, they just move on to the next best thing. So this is a significant problem. We have several groups working on it: the Seasonal Employment Alliance, the Outdoor Amusement Business Association, and every festival, Chamber of Commerce can become a member of the Outdoor Amusement Business Association. You'll get weekly updates. You'll get monthly newsletters on what's happening here. I think it's $50 or $100 to be a member, an associate member of the Outdoor Amusement Business Association, the Michigan Association of Fairs and Exhibitions, and of course this association, the Festival and Events Association, have all been champions in sharing our story, sharing our information, and disseminating documents like I just showed you on the screen. But this is a significant challenge that only continues to get worse with the current economic climate in our country and the lack of laborers, which is not a political statement. I think we can point to baby boomers and retirement and smaller families, and we just don't know where the workers are. So, Mike, I think I've covered essentially a lot of information there. So if there's some questions, or if anybody else that's in the carnival industry that's on here wants to chime in, or Sonia, I know you and I have worked hand in hand on this. There's a few points you want to add to. I just tried to give a synopsis in the first 20 minutes here, so we've got some time. Mike?
First of all, I'd like to, I want to add some comments to it, but before we get into a free-for-all, down the bottom of your screen, and for those of you that are not 100% familiar with Zoom, there is a tab called Reaction. Click on that and raise your hand, and we'll call on you so we don't have everybody talking at once. Appreciate that. I also want to just let everyone know, because we have carnivals here, we have people with festivals and events, we have Chamber of Commerce. I see that Tim High is here from Mackinac Island. This issue is obviously, it is very important to the festivals and events because of the carnival and the concessionaires, but it also greatly affects hoteliers. I don't know anyone that has been in a hotel in the last year that was able to have their room cleaned between days at the end of your visit. It also greatly affects the restaurants for busing, for dishwashing, for wait staff, for cook and food prep. It also has a lot to do with, as Doug said, landscaping, lawn mowing, trimming, and beautification. So, I mean, that's why I invited so many people here. Doug talked about Representative Hutzinger and Gary Peters. I say call all of your local representatives, even if they are on board, so that they talk to their peers in Washington to tell them how important this legislation is in the state of Michigan. I was on a conference call earlier today with Dave Lorenz. He and Travel Michigan are working with the Travel Association across the country. And I've also had conversations with the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. Wendy Block is working on that and they are working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This is a huge issue. It's not a matter of taking away jobs from Americans. This is being able to perform what we are contracted to do. So I'll open the floor. Looks like Sonia.
So.
Okay, I'll speak slowly then. Thank you, Doug. Amazing. And Katie Adley should be our lobbyist because she's beautiful. All right. So Doug hit it on the head perfectly. Okay. Everything he said, perfect. We need action now. There is a federal spending bill in February, and we are now February 1st. So the time is now, where we need all of our festival partners to make this happen. So we need to reach out to your U.S. congressmen and our senators that represent us at the federal level, particularly Gary Peters. So Doug, we'll make sure that the Festivals Association has a copy of our white paper, because that identifies the contact information for each of our congresspeople and also for the senators. And we want you to copy our lobbyist so he knows that these actions are being taken. If you have a personal relationship with any of them, and a lot of you might, pick up the phone and call their office. And we'll see if we can get something to this federal spending bill in February. Okay, so very, very important. You'll get it's a step-by-step instructions that we need you to follow, and we need it to be more than just you. So if you're representing, let's say, a festival in Cadillac, I see the Cadillac Chamber is on. Please also ask other folks on either your board of directors, people that volunteer with your festival, other people who might be engaged in the process of operating this. I took a few minutes to check and see how many of these visas were allocated last year in Michigan. And about 40% of them looked to go to Mackinac Island. About 40% of them went to landscapers, and about 20% went to carnivals. And right now, what we're doing is using all of our constituencies that we touch and talk to help us lobby to get this done. Carnivals are unique in that we're all over the state of Michigan. We have resources and access to boards of directors and people that volunteer to help in each of these communities across the state. That is where we are seeing the traction. We have to continue this. We need your help with it right now. Okay.
Thank you. For those that are chamber members, Wendy Block with the Chamber of Commerce is also our lobbyist in Washington, and we need to reach out to her because this affects all of your chambers, because I guarantee every single one of you have got somebody that is fitting into one of these boxes. Jason, you're next.
My first question is for Adley. Who did the bow, mom or dad?
That was Dad. Mom's not here, so Dad had to do the whole thing today. I'm pretty impressed with myself. It even matches.
We're proud. You brought your A game.
All right, good.
Give me a little bit of color, and I'm trying to think how to paint the worst case scenario for when I reach out to my representatives. I have Molinar, and then I actually do have an old relationship with Peters I'll try to reach out on. But give me like the nightmare scenario. Get what do I say? Or you talked a little bit about you're going to be parking equipment. You're going to be, help me out with that end of it.
Okay, well, I think at the Fair Convention 2 weeks ago, every one of us that is in this situation, and even those that aren't using H-2B, had some heart-to-heart conversations with our fair boards and simply said, you've got to understand the American labor shortage exacerbated by the lack of visas available is going to, like I said, it's going to be a reduction in services. The nightmare scenario is that they don't lift the cap, that we don't get any language in, and as Sonia said, the funding bill that's coming up in February, it's another CR, continuing resolution to fund the government is what it'll be. And CRs tend to kick the can down the road. We've got a funding bill, but it could end up in a continuing resolution, which means nothing really changes, which means the discretionary language is still there for DHS and DOL to lift the cap. We have the ability today for them to issue 60, 70, 80,000 additional visas for April 1. If they did that today, by the time they process it and it gets through and they issue the interim final rule and they can get it to all of our recruiters and so forth, you would be looking at March before anybody would be able to start processing those. It takes 3-4 weeks. And then we could start bringing those visas in and maybe be in time for that April 1 date of need. If that doesn't happen, if none of these visas come, I can tell you that there will be carnivals that won't survive. They will not survive this. There will be, I'm confident there'll be hotels that will close their doors. This and the economic impact, which is, money talks in Washington and in politics. I think that's what you have to drive home. I can walk into a congressman's office in Washington, D.C. and say, I'm Doug Birch from the Outdoor Music Business Association or from TJ Schmidt Carnival. And they'll say, it's good to meet you. What do you do? If I walk in and say, I'm Doug Birch from Hilton Hotels, they know what Hilton Hotels is. And they understand the economic impact if Hilton Hotel Chain has to close 60 of its locations because they can't find staff. So the economic impact from the Chamber of Commerce side of things, the festival partner side of things, what kind of revenue does the carnival and the concessions bring in? We've also gone a year in a pandemic where you've seen how hard it was to operate without that revenue in most cases. And so if the carnival calls and says, we're not coming, we don't have enough staff, we can't make it. We just can't make it go. Or we're going to come and you can plan for a 50 to 60% reduction in revenue because we don't have the folks to get the revenue. We can't generate it. We simply don't have the staff. What does that look like for an impact on your organization and your event? And then what are the economic drivers beyond that in your community? A couple of years of a carnival not being able to get there, and the festival shuts down. What happens to the gas stations and the restaurants and the hotels in those towns that rely on Festival Week as one of their top producing weeks of the year? So money talks, economic impact, but worst case scenario is you're going to start to see where some of us just aren't going to survive. We're not going to survive it. Period.
So can I follow that up a touch with, is it fair to say there, as a talking point when I engage them, to say KISS, 4-H, and FFA scholarships goodbye? Their revenue is going to be gone. Forget about little leagues and baseball community parks that are dependent upon a lot of these community revenues that they share. Those will be gone. It's not a stretch to go to that kind of extent.
I think it's a slippery slope, particularly with 4-H or FFA. You've got to be careful. You want to know, and this is better poised to the people who are in the chamber positions around the festival boards that know where they distribute their funds each year in a revenue sharing. So, when I work with one event that's a Chamber of Commerce, what do they do with those festival funds that they receive? So you've got to be careful. But in general, you're on the right track. Yes, the programs that these festivals support would be impacted negatively by a lack of revenue, certainly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Going back to what Doug said, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry as far as industry as economic impact. And this affects the fairs, the festivals, the carnivals, the local communities. It's huge. That's why I went so wide on this and invited everybody to participate in it. And that's why I'm talking to the Chamber of Commerce and I'm talking to Pure Michigan, because this is a major impact on all of us. Tim, you were up you went to Washington, did you not, too long ago?
Yes, Mike, and thanks for letting me attend today. This is very informational. Appreciate it. Yeah, we did the Michigan delegation, and last December, I don't know what kind of impact we made. It's the same old song and dance, I think, but all of the Michigan Congress people that we went to see were very friendly and amenable to it. But again, as Doug said, no one's gonna be a hero, or you can't really become a hero if you become a champion on this. And that's what we need at this particular time. We need a champion to get us over some kind of a finish line, and we just don't have one right now. But Molinar, Jason, when you go see him, very, very familiar with the topic and very supportive. It has been in the past. Slotnick and Meyer, I think, are the new pros that we've got in Michigan as far as support. And Peters, I don't know why with him in that position, you would think that we'd be able to get a little more done. But, and especially with his aide that has so much H-2B experience. But I don't know. Long answer to your question, Mike, but it's very frustrating. And again, as just a tiny little island, we spend close to $250,000 a year on this.
And Tim, I have a meeting with Representative Meyer, I think next week. They've actually reached out to me, so they're really anxious to maybe we'll get a champion in an unfamiliar place, or we weren't suspecting that. So they reached out to me.
That is incredible, Doug, and he is a superstar. And from his family background, not the grocery side, but the landscaping side, he certainly gets it. That's great news.
Thanks, Tim. Before we go to Sonia, I just wanted to hammer home that just because we think we have a Congress representative that is in favor of this doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to bother them. They need to know that there is not just the pilot light is on underneath them, but we have to pull the burner all the way up and make it as hot as possible so that when they leave the friendly confines of the state of Michigan and go to Washington, D.C., they're talking to their fellow congressional representatives and say, don't let me go back there and get that heat again, and we need to get this thing passed. Go ahead, Sonia.
Mike, you might have an economic impact analysis at some point. I think somebody with the organization must have run some sort of calculus to understand what is the effect of this portion on the economy in the state of Michigan. That might be good information for folks to know. I think we have something similar to that at the NAFB, which is the peers group, but the numbers are very big. So that's very important information to have, handy. It's not just my family's sixth generation family business that's going to struggle. It's the economic impact of these events that we sponsor around the state. Let's put that information. And then political lobbying advice for those of you that are able to actually get on the phone with some of these folks. The thing that has killed H-2B progress in the past has been the labor union movement. Okay. And it's important for everyone to understand that the folks that are coming in on these H-2B worker visas are being paid prevailing wage rates that are set by Department of Labor. So no way, shape, or form does this H-2B program take away other high-paying jobs from other Americans. In fact, most of us, when we entered into the H-2B visa program, then become subject to paying our American workforce the same wages as the H-2B ones. And that has, in effect, increased wages across the board for our Americans as well. So when you're paying the Department of Labor specified general labor wage rate, this shouldn't be a union issue. So it's important for folks to really know and understand that, especially when they're talking to folks like Gary Peters' office. That's been the hang up in the past. It's a labor union issue. These folks are getting paid good wages, and so are the Americans that are working side by side with them. Just not enough Americans.
The prevailing wage, just to put a finer point on that, is higher than minimum wage, always. It's always higher than minimum wage. In Otsego County, for example, that's one that comes to mind because I play the Gaylord Elpin Fest. I think there's some folks here from Gaylord. I mean, we're up to $15, $16 an hour in Gaylord on the prevailing wage side of things. So, and that's not the highest I've seen. It averages, I would say, somewhere around $12 or a little bit more an hour is where that average comes in. And as Sonia said, when you use the program, the American laborers must be hired in at the prevailing wage or higher. The Fair Labor Standards Act exemption that carnivals enjoy when not using the H-2B program, which allows to pay minimum wage or below, goes away. You no longer qualify for that exemption because you're using this government program. So just to put a finite point on that, the wages are high in this program and they drive the American wages right along with them.
Anyone else have any questions or comments or suggestions? Or shall we see if Doug's co-host wants to talk to us? Don't all speak at once.
I will also add to the wages portion, just so everybody's aware, I think information is powerful. Bringing these people into the country and taking them and getting them home is all the responsibility of the employer. We pay their transportation to the consulate in Mexico. We pay all their visa processing fees. We pay the consulate fees. We pay a recruiter fee. We pay inbound transportation, lodging, daily sustenance rates, and outbound transportation and sustenance rates as well. So, my company alone, it's well over $40,000 to $50,000 annually. It's actually probably more than that, really, almost $60,000 before they ever work, just to get them in and out of the country. This when you know the program, it's hard to wrap your mind around why this is such a problem. And in this particular administration and climate, to one point, when you know, because this will come up in some conversations, the illegal immigration problem that we see, and that we're busing folks to different countries and flying them to different states and putting them up on a taxpayer dollar. Why don't we give those folks a visa when they get here? And all of our phone numbers, and we gladly hire them. There's a solution. We're trying to do things the legal way. We're trying to do things on the up and up, and through the bureaucracy that is our government, we've really got some significant problems. So I think it's important to have all that information kind of in the back of your head in case when you're speaking to representatives or congressmen's offices, you can pull from that.
So the homework assignment is contact your congressional representative. Please, please, please. Not just for the carnivals. Obviously, the carnivals is huge, but get everybody involved in it. Get everybody that is affected by the H-2B legislation. Get them involved in this. We need to turn the heat up on everyone so that when they get to Washington, they don't forget what we asked them to do. So with 18 minutes to eat your sandwich for lunch before you have to get back to work, does anybody else got any questions or comments?
Mike, you could share out my contact information. I'm happy to take phone calls or emails at any point in time. Just go ahead and share that out.
We've got a number of requests for the information that Sonia provided, so we'll get that out to everyone that's on this call, along with your contact information. You can always contact me. I've been in contact with, again, Travel Michigan, which is working with all the other statewide organizations, not just Michigan, but Ohio, Indiana, whatever, and also with the Chamber of Commerce, Wendy Block. I have had conversations with her. I know that this is an item that is on the agenda for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They've been working through that. So we're just trying to get, I don't want our congressional representatives to have a phone call in their office that is not from someone calling about H-2B. That's really where we need to be on this. So talk to your friends, talk to your cohorts, talk to anybody else. Share congressional people's phone numbers with them. Just because one phone call comes from your community, there should be 100 phone calls from your community, and so on and so forth. This has got to be the hot issue. We want those guys, and that guys being a figurative term, we want those individuals to go to Washington and tell their peers, we got to get this passed because I don't want to go home and get my butt chewed by my constituents. So rally the troops. Bob, you had a comment?
I think Doug or whoever wants to speak to it, for the OABA membership for a committee, I believe it's as cheap as $50 for the whole group. That's not for an individual. And for anybody on here that's not a member of MFEA or MAFE, it's time to do it. It's not a high expense for your committee, your fair board, etc. And your voice can be heard. And again, with the OABA, that's our national, essentially lobbying directly to this issue. For $50 to get 20 people on the email so they can see what's going on, they can have input. I mean, that's pretty invaluable service for the cost.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Tim, you getting any snow up there in the island?
I think they are. I happen to be ensconced in a little warmer climate though right now.
Or we're getting a blizzard. Maybe not. All right then. No one else has anything that they want to share, questions they want to ask. We're going to get the pertinent information emailed out to you guys shortly after this meeting. I appreciate everyone being here. Doug, thank you very much for presenting. I know that if it wasn't for your cohort there, it would not have been as entertaining. So I appreciate that. Have a great day. Take on the world. Make your phone calls. Please make your phone calls.